I now welcome Al Rapaport from Open Mind Zen. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to talk about being mindful of the positive in our lives.
All right, good morning, everyone. So nice to be back again. I was trying to remember how many years I've been coming here doing talks. I'm sure it's been at least 10, maybe 12 or 14. I can't remember exactly. Maybe some of you have been around a while can remember. It's been a while, and it's always fun to be here. So this morning, I'd like to talk about being mindful of the positive and how. Sure.
You're nice and tall.
Okay, yeah.
There we go.
I usually have to adjust mics. How we can be aware of the negativity bias that humans have, and being human, we all have, including myself, and perhaps what we can do about it. So it's been proven, and it's something that I often suspected before I really started reading about this and doing research about it, but it's been proven that humans are biased towards negative thoughts. And of course, this is called the negativity bias. So what this is the tendency for people to give more weight to negative experiences or negative information than positive experiences or information. This bias can affect our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and of course can also spread, and I think has spread can spread to our families, to our local communities, and to the national community, and then of course to the community of planet Earth, the international community. So there's three basic ways that they say negativity kind of creeps in. Number one, attention. So we're all aware of social media and how it functions. And people tend to pay more attention to negative events and stimuli than to positive ones. This is just a proven fact. That's why probably if you're on Facebook or Instagram or any of those services, you'll notice that there's a lot of that kind of information that comes through. Memory. Our memory is actually programmed to create a more vivid memory of the negative. And it's also easier to recall negative experiences than positive. And then perception itself, negative experiences can shape our very perceptions and lead to us expecting negative outcomes. So the suspicion is that this has an evolutionary root in the sense that we needed to be more attuned to things that could affect us negatively from a very early time in human history, prehistoric times. There were many animals that could kill us. There were many things that could really damage us. So for survival, we kind of developed over time this bias towards the recall of the negative. Now, as someone I'm a Zen teacher, but I'm also a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. And in the 8-week MBSR course, one of the initial exercises we do is, or the homework that's given, is you, for a week, write down positive experiences throughout your day. You know, it's up to the person as to how often they do this, but whenever you notice you're having a positive experience, you just write it down. And we do that the first week. The second week, we do that with the negative. The reason that we do the first week with positive is it's a lot harder to remember. And if you don't think that's the case, try it. I suggest this exercise. Anyone can do it. It can actually lead to feeling a lot better about your situation in many instances, which is just start writing it down. There's something about committing those thoughts to paper that give them a kind of concrete reality. So again, we see this negativity pervading all around us. And because we're so connected by social media, by forms of 24/7 news, that I know when I was growing up, I'm 71, and when I was a child, I remember seeing the news. My father used to watch it, but it was really the big things that were on the news. It was a half an hour usually at around dinner time, which he played. My mom hated it, but he would play the news while eating dinner. But now, you know, if a camel sneezes in the desert in Iraq, we hear about it. If it's an interesting camel, someone will take a picture of it, and it'll be on Instagram, and it'll be all around the world. The camel sneezes, you know. Did we need to know that? I mean, sometimes it's interesting to find out what the camel's doing in Iraq. But what that does is it gives us, if we're tuned into it, which most people are these days, especially younger people, there's a constant deluge of information, and we're just not designed, we're not biologically designed to process the amount of information that exists right now that's coming at us in all different forms. Advertising, social media, people's prevailing opinions, it's constant. So the question is, what do we do about that? That's the way I always look at things like this, is, well, how can we counteract that tendency, that bias towards the negativity? And one way is, as I said, to start becoming aware. So we're talking about mindfulness of the positive, which is not a Pollyannish way of viewing it. We don't want to downplay when something is happening that's harming others. I don't think that focusing on positive needs to affect our empathy or compassion for others that are going through difficult times, that may not be able even to do what we're talking about, to begin to get a handle on what the positive can bring. But to really become aware of what we can be, or what we can have gratitude for, what we can have gratitude for. Sometimes it's not easy. So last year around this time, I just had an ankle surgery in January, and I was in a cast, and it was the first cast I'd ever had in my life at age 70. And it wasn't any fun at all. I couldn't get around. I had to learn to do things differently. It was painful and uncomfortable and all that. But what I tried to do every day is wheel my little knee scooter outside and sit in the sun, which this time of year is a really nice time in Florida to sit in the sun. And I would put the tailgate of my pickup down, and I'd plop my cast up on that pickup gate, and I would spend about a half an hour or however long I could handle it in the sun. Sometimes I'd call somebody I knew, a friend or a family member. But just that experience of getting that sunlight and being out in the fresh air, in the kind of cooler air that we have in Florida in January or February, at least sometimes in February. It hasn't been so cool lately, as you know. Just that whole experience just totally changed the rest of my day. And I don't know whether it was the light. You know, they say that the light coming into your eyes can really affect your mood and all that. But whatever it was, it really helped. So being aware of when we're negative, and being aware of how that negativity then affects our psychology, our actions, our psychology, and then everyone around us. We know how it works. Negativity spreads, but positive spreads also. And part of, I feel, what's very important in getting a handle on this is seeing what our position is in the universe as a whole, which another way of saying this is getting the bigger perspective, getting the big picture. What is the big picture in any given situation we're in? In Zen and in mindfulness practice, one of the ways we get the big picture is to begin to experience ourselves as not just the individual body, Al, that's standing here, that my experience of ends where the skin meets the air, but experiencing our self with the big S, right, the big self, as more of a universal experience. So not denying the individual, but also experiencing our spirit, our self, however you want to view it, as being connected to all things, as being part of the not even just the community or the earth, but indeed the whole universe and possibly many other universes. We don't really know how many exist. And then when we begin to get that perspective, what happens is we realize that the individual self is always suffering in some form or another and is never entirely satisfied with where it's at. I think if we're honest about it, we would admit that. I know I've realized that about myself. It's not necessarily a negative thing, provided we can put it into perspective. So the individual self has this viewpoint that the whole rest of the universe is there to serve it, and it's at the center. It's the center of the universe, kind of the way that they used to think the earth was the center of the universe. And Galileo almost was killed because of this. Because he said, no, I've calculated it. The earth is just rotating around the sun. And boy, the church at that time, didn't like it. And they basically made him recant. And he did, because he wanted to stay alive. It's really sad, but true. And we see some of that happening these days, too, in a little different way, unfortunately, but still the same kind of thing. So when we understand that rather than being the center of the universe, that we are a point within it, then it really changes our perspective of our own suffering, even of humanity's suffering, of the time and place that we're in, that we give tremendous importance to, and at times it really seems tremendously important. But the fact is that in the big picture, this is a speck. I'm talking about our planet. We're a speck on that speck, even a smaller speck, and in a very, very short period of time. You know, the lives we live are very short. And so when we can identify with that whole, with that greater whole, and this is part of the process of meditating and learning to merge with that kind of consciousness, with that kind of consciousness of that spacious feeling, then we can turn our attention back toward the individual experiences we have and see them as much more fleeting than they appear to be. Sometimes we're in the midst of a very difficult situation, like a surgery or a loss, a health loss or financial loss or loss of a loved one, which all of us probably within the last year or so, probably everyone in this room has experienced in some form or another. I know I have. So developing strategies to counteract negativity bias can be manifold. There's many different things we can do. Gathering together like this is one way, because we're accentuating the positive in life and having fellowship. As I said, going within also. So there's the inner things we can do through what I use as meditation and some other techniques. And then there's the outer things we can do in terms of gathering together, doing good for others, trying to make a difference where we can, making a contribution in any way we feel we can. And everyone's different in their ability to do that. Some people can make a small contribution, and that's all right. And I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about anything. Could be holding that door for that person. Could be just being nice to someone that's serving us in a restaurant or at a festival or something like that. It's so simple, actually, and it's relatively easy to do most of the time, but we need to bring awareness to that. And then when that person feels like they're being respected and we're enjoying them being on planet Earth, then they start feeling that way, and it spreads. So the outer things are also important. The outer things are a reflection of our inner, and in a sense, inner and outer are the same, in the sense that when we manage to do this on the inside and see the things we can have gratitude for and experience that on a deep level, then that tends to spread out in our sphere of influence and influence others. And maybe it won't make a difference in the whole right away, but my feeling is that it does to some extent, even if it's a little bit. And you get a lot of people doing that, and it does have an effect. So maybe we can open it up now. If there's any, do we have a little time for questions? If anyone has any questions about this?